Heidi. Good morning,
Good
everybody.
morning.
Thank you. Okay,
You
well,
have
good morning, everybody.
a very global audience. I tell
That's
you, I don't know if you were
that's
listening
cool.
to me, but there's people from all over the world,
Listening
Spain,
to you.
of
Okay,
course,
yes,
from Argentina.
this shows that the topic is very interesting and the topic is international. And this is a
Exactly.
very special workshop for me because I believe it's complex. It has to do with bonding. It has to do
Mm-hmm.
with commitment. Okay, so we will start, right? And I always
Okay,
start with
enough for me.
phrases.
Over to you. Enjoy the meeting. Enjoy the
Thank
session.
you,
Bye
Maria.
bye. See
Thank
you
you.
later. Bye.
Good morning. Hello, Ale. Hello, everybody. I see some people I know. I see some of my followers. Thank you very much. So I always like to start with some phrases because this is about thinking. This is about self-assessing our work. And so I have chosen these two phrases that I loved. However difficult life may seem, there is always something you can succeed in. Don't just give up. And this goes for teachers, this goes for parents, this goes for students with special needs as well, okay? And some of the most wonderful people are those who don't fit into boxes. And our educational system is about boxes, boxes that we should try to open. And I think it's the right time for us to try. So to start with, look at this. This is a simple sequence, and we all the time talk about sequences. In 1 second, what number would you write instead of the question mark? 2, 10, 12. Think about the numbers in Spanish. I know there are people from different countries, but this has to do with Spanish, okay? Think about the numbers in Spanish and tell me what number you would complete, you would write. It's not 20. No, it's not 20. Okay. It's 200 in Spanish, 200. And what you are doing, what you are all doing is you are thinking in terms of the way we were taught. You think of sequences and you say 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, but go to the beginning. It says 2, 10. What is the connection between 2 and 10? And what is the connection between 18 and 19? These numbers all begin with a letter D in Spanish. Exactly. Some people get it. All right. This is connected to special educational needs. We have to deconstruct the way we have learned to teach. We have to become more open. This is why I'm showing you this. Okay. So let's see. Here we are. I'm going to move my picture. Okay, here we are. And when we talk about special educational needs or special needs education, or sometimes now special educational needs and disabilities, and many people say, no, we should talk about inclusion. We should talk about the inclusive classroom, inclusive education. Why? Because when we think about special needs, we are defining everything in negative terms. We are thinking of those children as children with problems, while the term inclusion has a more positive angle. Inclusion means everybody working in the same way. That is the difference between inclusion and integration. However, unfortunately, I would say everywhere, not only in Argentina, everywhere, we are beginning to walk towards inclusion. We are not there yet. We are still integrating children with difficulty. And why is that so? First of all, because we lack knowledge. We don't know about this. We don't even know what special needs are. We don't know how to tackle all the situation. We don't know what strategies we should use. And it's when I say we, I mean teachers, but it's not only that. It's not only that. Sometimes if you take a child with difficulty to 2 different doctors, maybe you get 2 different diagnoses. And maybe it takes a long time before the specialist gives you a diagnosis because this is new. Think about the past. What happened in the past? Children with difficulty were killed. Then gradually they were put into asylums, psychiatric institutions. Then we had the birth of special schools, and now we are only just beginning to allow them into, within inverted commas, normal institutions, normal schools. And why is this so? Because there is still the persistence of certain educational practices. We are still being trained as teachers in a very traditional way. The classroom organization remains traditional in many institutions, okay? And above all, because there are diverse opinions about the appropriateness of inclusion. There are many people, and when I say people, I also mean experts. It's not only people who don't know. There are many people who are not 100% sure whether inclusion is possible and whether inclusion is the way out, because it's almost ideal, okay? Maria de Los Angeles, welcome. Never mind, you're welcome. Thank you for joining us. Okay, and also, we have to bear in mind that our reality in Argentina, but maybe the people that are from different parts of the world, as we have seen, Greece, Spain, they can tell us the context is essential. English here in Argentina remains a very foreign language, as Widdowson says. So there is like a great effort to generalize across contexts. When you Google, if you go to Google Academic and you write special educational needs, you will have a lot of papers, but papers that were written by experts from where? From Finland, from the United States, and they don't apply to our reality because it's different. It's not English as a first language. It's not English as a second language. It's English as a foreign language in a special context that is Argentina. And Argentina is such a vast country that within the same country you have different contexts as well. So we cannot possibly generalize. This is why this topic is so complex, and this is why there are no recipes, and this is why it's very difficult to say you have to do this, this, or that, and you will get the results you want. This is about trial and error. This is about observation. Some people have suggested co-teaching, as you can see in the picture. Not everybody agrees. One teacher being the English teacher and the other one being the expert in special education. Well, if the expert doesn't know English and has not had the chance to learn English and to go through that process, then it will be very difficult to work together. And also the fact that there are no statistics. So it's very difficult to talk about concrete strategies to get to results. When we talk about inclusion, to start from the beginning, we have to talk about, or we talk about social and academic needs. That is, children who have some needs that are or are not met, okay? Usually they are not met, especially when we talk about academic and social, okay? Both of them have to be met to allow us to say, yes, I am inclusive. Yes, my classroom is inclusive. Actually, it's very difficult. Also, because what is happening now is that you've got one down child, another one who has some kind of hearing impairment, another one who is dyslexic. You don't have 5 who have the same difficulty. So it's very difficult, okay? So very often the result of this, sometimes I look down because I'm trying to read what you are writing in the chat room, okay, in the chat box. So sometimes the result of this is that pupils are unfortunately identified in terms of what they cannot do, okay, in terms of their shortcomings. So you have students who cannot read well, students who cannot write properly, students who cannot follow what the teaching is saying. And ideally, if you talk about inclusion, if you talk about an inclusive institution, if you talk about an inclusive classroom, then it should concern all, and not only the students, all the educational community. It should concern all teachers. It should concern all students, but also all parents. And this is precisely what makes it so difficult. To get there, we definitely need to challenge traditional educational structures. And this is very difficult, but this is related to values clearly. But when we say values, it's also related to politics. It is politics, it is democracy. Okay, so this is why we are walking in that direction in many parts of the world. I would say in most parts of the world. When I prepared this workshop, I wrote a tailor-made workshop because I wanted to answer questions. I know the topic is very interesting. I know we all have cases. I have received your questions. Very often, lots of people ask the same questions. I will tell you two things. This is not my first workshop about this. We have even written some interesting booklets. So if you go to macmillan.com.r/Zen, I will show you at the very end. But if you go to Macmillan, Argentina, and you write Zen, S-E-N, you will find different booklets that tell you, both in English and in Spanish, what dyslexia is, what ADD is, what the autistic spectrum is, okay? Those are the starting points, let's say. Then you can also watch my previous workshops. If you subscribe to Macmillan's YouTube channel, that is Macmillan Argentina. There you've got my previous workshops. So this is more general. Anyway, I will try to answer some of the questions that lots of people asked, okay? So when we talk about special educational needs or special educational needs and disabilities, what are we really talking about? We are talking about a lot of things, because everybody has special needs. You have special needs. I have special needs. Maybe you are better at listening than at writing. Maybe you are better at presenting than at testing or creating your own tests. Well, the same happens in connection with these difficult things. We can classify them, though. We can talk about physical special educational needs or physical needs, more special needs related to sensory impairment or developmental needs or behavioral and emotional needs. The ones that we very frequently have, and the ones that most questions were about, were the developmental needs. The physical ones, like sclerosis or chronic asthma or epilepsy, I mean, they are physical. Usually a student has got a diagnosis and there is medication. For sensory impairment, you are not likely to find a blind child, but maybe a child with some kind of visual impairment or with limited hearing. So it's not so difficult to cope with that. The ones that really present a problem are these ones: autistic, or children who are within the autistic spectrum, or children who are dyslexic, or Down children, or children with Down syndrome, or children, also very common nowadays, with processing disorders. They perceive, they can hear, they can in a way follow you, but somehow the brain cannot put two and two together. Okay, Isabel says that she's got a blind boy and a blind adult. Okay, in those cases, you need definitely what we call braille, and there are institutions that can help you to transform texts, because it's either speaking or the special reading alphabet they have. There is no other way, okay? Now, why are we so worried about autism, dyslexia? Most of your questions were about dyslexia. First of all, I would like to tell you that we are not experts. We are not supposed to say whether a child or student is dyslexic or not. These developmental disorders or developmental difficulties are not pathologies. They are not diseases, so they are not to be cured. You are or you are not, and forever. That is, if you are within the autistic syndrome, the autistic spectrum, you will always be. If you are ADD, you will always be. Okay? So, why are we so worried? First of all, because nothing cures the child, and so we don't know what to do. And second, because they have a very clear impact on our teaching, a clear impact on the classroom organization, a clear impact even when we organize parents' meetings. And then a lot of emotional disorders, and now because of the pandemic, we have more and more that also have a great impact, but they are more associated with mental health, social and mental health. They are, for example, OCD or depression. How many teenagers are suffering from depression? Lots of teenagers, okay? Or how many children suffer from anxiety problems? Lots of them. And or oppositional defiance disorder. They haven't got a diagnosis, but we feel that they, in a way, challenge us all the time. They never accept our word. They don't respect authority. Something seems to be wrong, and we don't know what. Another characteristic, another condition, that is how we refer to all these. Another condition is selective mutism. Selective mutism was one of your questions, and it's an anxiety disorder. This is why they are emotional. And this is why it's very difficult to come to a diagnosis and very difficult to treat. And of course, it has also a great impact. You see how complex this is, because you have 30 students, some of them with a certain diagnosis, others with some kind of behavior pattern that we know does not correspond to what we expect. All this is affecting my teaching, my organization, my planning, my results. And on top of that, nobody tells me what I have to do. Exactly, Juliana. OCD means obsession and compulsion disorder, right? Exactly. Talk in Spanish. All right. Now, what is interesting is that, as I was telling you, with all this that we have on our plates, the first thing you have to do is ask yourselves, do I really want to try? Do I really want to go this way? Am I really interested in all this? Okay. Look at the red rectangle that you have with a mathematical operation. Clearly, the result is wrong. If I am a teacher, a traditional teacher, I will say this is wrong and that's it. If I am interested in this, if I am really interested in helping the child, the first thing I have to do is ask myself, why? What has led this child to this result? And if you look carefully, this is not a learning problem. The only thing is that the child misunderstood the concept of subtraction, because normally we think that you subtract a number from another one that is normally bigger. At the beginning, it's normally bigger. So this child understood that when you had 2 minus 7, in his mind, he transformed it into 7 minus 2. That's why he wrote a 5. So if you understand this, if you take the time to observe what the child did beyond thinking about the result and the fact that it's wrong, if you focus on the process, you will discover that there is some kind of logic behind it, and that if you stop and tell this child, not in public, look, it's not like this. You have to do it this way. The child will learn. The child will learn. But it takes a few minutes. It means that you have to sit down next to the child and explain everything to him in private. Personalization is essential here. But this kind of personalization that comes from observation. That is the first thing that will help you solve these problems, because here we are not talking about physical illnesses. We are talking about emotional things, about developmental things, And if it's developmental, it means that this person, this child or this adult will always be like this. So within this context, I can teach them English. Will they learn in the same way? Clearly not. Will they learn the same as the others? Probably not. But yes, they will learn English in a special way, maybe more oral, with more oral work than written work, maybe with corrections that are different, but they will learn. And patience and love, as Amalia is saying from Huku, definitely. This is for some teachers. I understand it's very demanding and it's not for everybody. Let me go down. So I show you the next slide. So the question that everybody, and Mariana is saying you also need time, definitely. But sometimes the time is not physical time. The time is your willingness to observe. Because many things that you will see today are very simple strategies. Of course, it affects your time, yes, but it's not something that you cannot manage, okay? If you really want to manage it. I understand that not everybody wants to do this because it's everything for the same money, okay? But what do they need? That's the $1 million question. This is the beginning. They need more time because they process things in a different way. So if you give the others 5 minutes, they will need 10, or they will need fewer things to do in 5 minutes. Clearly more time. They need a lot of attention. Remember, I told you that many of these conditions are emotional. When I say emotional, it has to do with the family. This is why they need attention. In a way, they are crying for help. And attention is shown in the classroom through personalization, which is not easy when you have 30, and when out of the 30, 5 or 10 have got difficulties. Okay, I know this is not easy, but this is what they need. Thank you, Mariana. Thank you. They need more opportunities. Remember that their life is difficult as it is. They are not doing this on purpose. They are not doing this to us because they are naughty. Their life is chaotic. Their life is not easy. Remember that if we could hear what happens in most staff rooms, in all schools in Argentina or in the world, you would probably hear negative comments. He cannot do this. His mother is crazy. This, that. So their life is complicated as it is. They do need more opportunities. The moment you show them love and care, they open up. Nobody can reach, nobody can get to good results without commitment. Commitment implies time, but more than time, it implies dedication. And this commitment includes all the community. Us, because I am within those 4 walls that make up my classroom, but also the institution because I need support. For example, to explain to parents what I am doing, because when you have a parents' meeting, maybe some parents complain because they say, you are lowering the standards. So it's the whole educational community and the family. I have also mentioned at the beginning that the context is important. And when I say the context, I mean the country, which is, my country, Argentina, is not the same probably as Greece or Spain. I also mean the city, because Buenos Aires is not the same as Jujuy or Santa Cruz, but I also mean the family. The family is the primary context, and very often emotional problems are better dealt with in certain families than in others. So this doesn't mean that you will always get it, but another piece of advice: when you decide to try, go personal, give attention, devote some time to that, but also insist all the time. Get to the family, ask them to help you, and we will see how in a few minutes, okay? And then these children, of course, need accommodations and modifications. They cannot work in the same way. If you expect them to do exactly the same in the same way, they will not do it. They will not be able to do it, not because they don't want to, but because the brain works in a different way. Now, in most cases, we do accommodations. Modifications are different because modifications imply a change in the curriculum. Modifications imply that the child will not get to the basic contents. In terms of English, for example, not tenses, not the same number of words, will not be able to go to cope with the book in the same way. So for modifications, we need authorization from the institution and from the ministry probably. But yes, we can develop accommodations, produce accommodations, okay? Accommodations are methodological. Accommodations are different ways of teaching the same, different ways of practicing the same, different ways, not a different content, okay? So for modifications, we need special authorization, but not for accommodations. Now, these are the 4 types of accommodations that you may have. When you talk about presentation accommodations, it means that you are changing the way in which you present the material. It means, for example, that you use your computer to project or use the ebook to project on the screen or on the wall to make the pictures bigger, to make images bigger. If you're using written material, you make bigger printouts. You use a bigger font for your tests. Okay, so these are presentation accommodations. It's the same thing, but in a different way. A response accommodation has to do with the answer that you expect the child or the student to give you. That is, for example, when you make WH questions, if you know that a child who has, maybe the child is dyslexic, or maybe the child has got some kind of reading difficulty and you think he's dyslexic. It doesn't matter. We are not here to label students. If the child is or is not, it's none of our business. I mean, we are there, we are here, we're in class to deal with, to help him learn English. That's all. So in the case of a child with reading difficulty, a response accommodation, for example, you have a text and you have questions. A response accommodation would be, for example, to transform the questions into a multiple choice, or to give him or her the beginning of the answer and helping them. Okay, so in a way, I'm not giving the answer, but I'm helping. I'm making the writing task easier. I expect the same answer, but in a different way. Hello, Valcarce. Hello from San Clemente. Hello, everybody. Okay, a setting accommodation has to do with the physical context. Sometimes it happens that if you have children who have attention issues, imagine that you've got a classroom that is near or next to the playground. Of course, they cannot concentrate. We should ask for a different classroom. That would be a setting accommodation. Or a child who needs, children who have these difficulties, these conditions, very often get along with only 1 or 2 classmates. So to be able to put those 2 classmates that he gets along with near him, I don't need a desk, I need a table. So I perhaps move my class to a classroom where I have tables instead of desks. That would be a setting accommodation, the physical context. And of course, timing and scheduling. Timing, I told you before that they need either more time or fewer things in the same amount of time. Or rescheduling, when you give them a test. If you know the others write the test in 1 hour, these children maybe they write 1 exercise per hour. So today I have exercise A, and maybe next class I have exercise B. That would be a rescheduling, okay, or a scheduling accommodation. So I am sticking to the same content, basically, just changing the format, just changing the methodology. Is this clear? Anyway, all this, thank you, all this will undoubtedly have an impact. When I have to think, oh, I need to print using a bigger font, oh, I need to move to classroom B, or I need to, of course it has an impact. It has an impact on me, it has an impact on the others. Maybe the other children ask, why, Miss? So all this we have to think of in advance. All this has to be informed institutionally in advance to the children, to the parents, always saying that you are not lowering the standards. If you are teaching do and does, in the accommodations, you will have do and does in another way. And maybe if we go really towards inclusion, then everybody can do the same accommodation. And it will suit everybody because the grammar will be the same. The only thing is that it will look different, but everybody will be doing the same. So let's move on to a few examples. In this workshop, in a few minutes, I will come to your questions specifically. Now, I'm speaking in general, okay? Children who have children or students, primary and secondary, you will see in a minute, children who have some kind of difficulty. The difficulty may be that they don't pay attention. The difficulty may be that he's got the Down syndrome. Maybe he has got some kind of reading trouble, which I think is dyslexia. Maybe he's got organization issues, which is very often related to the autistic spectrum. Maybe the child has got this selective mutism anxiety that now is so frequent. Okay. If we go to primary, this is taken from our new series that is called We Are Heroes. We have at the moment 2 series, one for primary and one for secondary, with specific educational needs accommodation. This series is for primary, and the teacher, the child, and or the parent can download accommodations. Not of everything, it would be impossible. It would be like writing another book, but here's accommodations of 2 activities per unit, plus a lot of tips in the teacher's books, okay? And the tests are also accommodated. So anyway, what we can see here is a vocabulary presentation. Colors. This works with everybody, with children who have special needs and children who are, within inverted commas, normal. What is the name of the book, Michaela? We Are Heroes. We Are Heroes, that's the series. It's got 6 levels. We Are Heroes, okay? It's a new series for primary by Macmillan. So this kind of material, you see, it's got block capital letters. That is for first grade. It goes hand in hand with what they do in first grade. It has got very little written material on the page in level 1. This is exactly what we need at the beginning, when we usually begin to notice that the child has got difficulty. This is listen and point. A lot of listening and oral with AU, oral, listening and speaking and pointing and doing. It will help the child gain confidence, okay? And it will make my work easier. Now, as we move on, this is an example from the same series, but level 2. We Are Heroes level 2. As they grow, the children need more written material, and it's logical. Okay, if you look at the pictures, this is part of the vocabulary presentation. But although the number of words is interesting, and if the child has got some kind of attention issue, he will find it hard to memorize so many words. So probably you can group the vocabulary items into places where they live, or you can put colors, all the gray animals together, or wild animals and farm animals and domestic animals, depending what animals you are teaching. You can group them into smaller groups, okay, so that you have fewer items per group. Anyway, as you have them here, you can teach 3 or 4 at a time, practice them orally, play some kind of song with 3 or 4 only, and then enlarge, teaching the next 4 and so on. it's difficult for a child with difficulty with these conditions. It's difficult to memorize all of a sudden 8 words. However, orally, it's not such a challenge. The challenge grows as you ask them to write the word. Okay, this series has got a very strong oral component and listening component in each unit. So one thing that these children can do, and they like doing and they need to do, is to memorize in terms of visual impact. So the photograph for each of the animals, the photograph is essential here. It wouldn't have the same impact to have a drawing of an animal, okay? The photograph is very important for these children. And then if you look down, they're going to sing in the middle. This has to do with oral, A-U, oral work. This will help them memorize how to say the word, but they also have to remember how they write the word. Children who have difficulty, or children who have reading troubles, or children who are dyslexic may find it very hard. We should not insist. We should never insist. But yes, and somebody's asking if we could translate. For vocabulary that is very concrete as animals, you don't need translation. The visual impact is much more important. Yes, I would translate. In the case of grammar, in the case of idiomatic expressions, yes, I would translate, but not when you teach concrete vocabulary. They don't have an interpretation difficulty, okay? The difficulty is in the writing part, or in memorizing so many words, or they like, but maybe if they have organization issues, they will find it hard. They like and they need classification, although some students find it hard. Look at exercise number 3 at the bottom of the page. We are classifying the animals that we have just learned in connection with the place where they live. On land, in water, in trees. And if you look at the color code, and that is something that a good teacher should point at, the colors have got a reason. Brown is for land, light blue is for water, and green is for trees. So these people remember through colors. It's a color code. So actually they are classifying. Actually they are practicing the spelling of the words they have learned. But in terms of the brain, we are teaching them much more. How to organize vocabulary, where these animals live, and so on. And this is something that they can do. I told you that this series has got Zen accommodations. This is an example for the teacher or the parent to download. This is how a reading comprehension activity in the book was accommodated. That is, normally you have a story and you have questions. These children will take ages to write the full answer. And if you are checking reading comprehension, the focus is not on grammar, the focus is on reading comprehension. So one way of transforming a question activity is this. You have a timeline and you have 5 actions, sentences, maybe exact sentences from the text, or maybe sentences that you have made simpler for them to understand. They have to cut the sentences. I'm adding movement, I'm adding motor skills, which very often these children fail at and have to learn and develop. And they have to stick the actions on the timeline. They may do it vertically, or, piece of advice, they may do it horizontally, which is the normal thing for a timeline. So here we are checking reading comprehension. We are making it visual. We are showing what happened first and what happened next. And we are adding motor skills. All this to do exactly the same. And you can do this with everybody. Okay, of course, this is not for secondary. I mean, this is for primary, right? So give me a second. I'm going down. Let's go to secondary. For secondary, another series that has got accommodations is On the Pulse Second Edition. On the Pulse Second Edition. These are examples from level 1. This is not the first level. You've got a starter level. This is from level 1. This is a vocabulary presentation. I told you that children who are dyslexic, children who are inattentive, children who are within the autistic spectrum will always be. So if a child is like this in the primary school, he will go on in the secondary school and at university. So what you do in the primary, you have to go on doing it in the secondary. And this is another thing that is failing. Very often the primary teachers like cater for more needs, and in the secondary school, so-so, and at university, we are only just beginning. I was watching TV 2 days ago and I heard that Universidad Católica has got a program, an inclusion program. And I also know that Universidad Tecnológica Nacional is also working on inclusion. And I think that this is absolutely great, okay? Somebody's saying that she is currently using this book. Actually, you're using the old edition. This is really new. It hasn't come out yet. This is for next year. It's a new edition with a lot of very interesting changes. Okay, let's look at the picture. This works okay with children without difficulty. Children who have some kind of condition will find this rather confusing. Why? The instructions say this. Look at the website of a sports center. Which activities are you interested in? Imagine I am the child. I look at the page. What calls my attention is the yellow part. But that is not what I am supposed to read. To choose the activities, I should read the light blue letters at the bottom of each photograph, below each photograph. Play basketball, do aerobics, take dance classes. Those are the activities I have to focus on. So if I tell the student to look at the activities, the first thing they will look at, because the visual impact for these children is great, they will go to the yellow part. But that's a mistake. They will get distracted. Where? What does it say? I'm sorry, I got lost. What are you talking about? Imagine 10 shouting. So as a teacher who knows the students you have and the issues they have, you would tell them, okay, you've got 8 photos, right? Look below the first photo. What does it say? Can you recognize the word? They will all recognize basketball. Most of them will know play basketball. But you draw their attention to the light blue letters. And then you tell them, after you have read those phrases, you tell them to do the activity. After you have finished, you draw their attention to the top part, because that is the paratext. And according to our curriculum, we should deal with paratexts. We should tell them that this is from a website. And how do you know it's from a website? And what is the website about? Yes, but we deal with that after the vocabulary, not before. Why? Because of visual impact. You see how I am only changing the order. I don't need to plan anything. I don't need anything special. I just need to be aware. Okay? So this is another page, and this is the grammar part. In grammar, we need charts. They need charts. These children need some kind of clear organization strategy. Now, in the book, we give them examples taken from a text. Instead of giving them the examples, I would ask them to underline examples. If I'm dealing with, for example, countable and uncountable nouns, I would ask them to use red for countables and green for uncountables. I would use colors. They need colors. They work very well using color codes, okay? So the same activity, but in a different way. Once they have the examples, okay, from the examples, let's go to exercise D. Look at the visual diagram. How can we complete it? And again, especially because this is book number 1, it's not for 5th year. This is for 1st year. So at this stage, we can still work with colors. Perhaps when the student is 17, maybe he doesn't like it, not in front of all the others. But when he's 13, they may still like it. So we can use red for the WH word and green for the auxiliary and another color for the verb, or at least the auxiliaries, or colors help. Only then do we go to the activities. Okay, look at the exercises. Look at exercise 1 and 2. They've got 4 sentences each. This is for secondary. This is for first year secondary. Can you lower it? Somebody's asking, this is why I'm reading. Can you lower it? Yes, you may use it in 7th grade, for example. It's not a problem. Now, the number of sentences is okay. 4 is the number everybody can handle. Of course, faster learners will finish them faster. Now, go to exercise number 1. You've got to make up, the child has got to make up the question. Even though the child has got the chart, even though he has got the examples, if you don't use the blackboard to write it bigger, to write it using colors, or to underline and circle and show the order clearly, they will find it very difficult because it's abstract. So if one way of accommodating this would be to give them the first word. Another way, and I think it's necessary, is to use a much bigger font. Fonts are essential. Children with reading issues or with organization issues cannot read fonts like this. They need Verdana, number 14 on, bigger than 14. So perhaps you can project this on a screen or on the whiteboard, and in that way you will make it bigger, or you can get a bigger printout. They cannot possibly work like this, and they will find it very, very difficult to read in the book and write in the folder. Here, they don't have any space to write in. So that's another difficulty. When they have to go from one thing to another, they will get lost, okay? What about giving the words to choose? Natalia, I don't understand your question. For exercise number 1, they have the words. They have to put the words in order, okay? So unfortunately, they will get lost with an activity as it is. In the second exercise, they have to write questions for the underlined answers. It is abstract. It is very abstract. So again, I would first of all make it bigger. Second, I would work on this orally. As they say it orally, I would write the first WH word on the board. Like 1, it says, Brian lives near the beach. I ask them, what is the first word? What do you think? I can offer them a choice if you want. Like I said, where, what, or how? When they say where, I can even ask one of these students who has difficulty. And when he or she says where, I write number 1, where on the board, clearly, big enough. And then again, the problem of reading in the book and writing in the folder, they will get lost. So here you have 2 options. You use accommodations that are in the book. So if you use on the PAL second edition, you will have the accommodations. Another option is you type it out again, leaving space for them to write there. Remember that you have to type a line, because they can go up and down even when they are in 5th year secondary school. They need lines, and that's a way. And first, orally, always orally first. I go on with the same book. I am still in the secondary section. I have a reading text. You see that as we advance in the book, the texts become longer. And this is a true story. It's what is the book? Marcela is asking. This is on the PALS second edition. It will be available very soon. Not available yet. This is a story. It's true. Most of the material on the Pulse second edition is true, so you can look for videos. If you look for a real video of this house on wheels, that will make the lesson livelier, that will make your students more interested, and these students in particular, they will be hooked on. Remember that they need visuals. One thing is to show them a small picture in a book. Another thing is for them to watch a video that you're projecting about the true thing, or an interview that you get, okay? Now, that would be the trigger, watching the video, making them interested, showing the house, imagining, why are they living there? What can they do there? Look, the door is closed. What do you imagine they have in the small house on wheels? That would be the first part. The second part is, how do I deal with a text like this? These children, all of them, cannot cope with a text like this. If I expect them to read at the same speed as the others, I'm wrong. If I expect them to read and understand, to be able to answer questions, I'm wrong. So if I know this beforehand, why should I challenge them to do something that I know they cannot do? So what should we do? First, all these children, first, anticipation. That is the technique. Anticipation means that you tell the child that you are going to read this in class next Wednesday. So on Monday or Friday before, you tell them to read this. If you've got the audio, to read and listen to this at home. This is why you need the word I told you at the beginning, commitment from the child and from the family. The mom or dad or whoever needs to make him sit and read. Flipped classroom, that's great if you have it, yes, but even the flipped classroom is great. It's ideal for this situation, okay? We should not confuse it with projecting the text on the board. If you project it or not, and the reading text is as long as this, you will have the same problem. Projecting or not projecting, because it's too long and there is too much information which they cannot process. So the first thing is anticipation. When you anticipate, what will happen is that out of the 10 who have got difficulty, 5 will not read it, 5 will forget about it, or 5 parents will not have the commitment. The other 5 will. Unfortunately, that will always happen, and this is one of the reasons why dealing with special needs is so complex. I know what I do, but I cannot change what the mother does, what the father does or doesn't do, okay? So the first thing is to anticipate. The second is, as you deal with this in class, you segment. That is the second technique, segmentation. That is, the same text, you deal with it paragraph by paragraph. Instead of having all the text with 5 questions below it, you have 1 paragraph and 1 question or 2 questions, another paragraph and 1 or 2 questions. So you can do this yourselves. If you can project the material because you have an ebook, you can start covering and uncovering parts, or using Zoom to zoom in and zoom out. That's another thing. And if you are printing it bigger or segmented, another option you can have is to use a special font. You can, if you have time, and this I understand it's not for everybody, it's very demanding, but ideally you should use a bigger font. Normal fonts like Verdana or Times New Roman, number 14 on, or there are some fonts for dyslexic people. They are specific. The one that you can see there is one, Open Dyslexic. However, fonts that are good for dyslexic people very often look confusing to all the others. And if you speak about difficulties, it's not only dyslexic children. You have a lot of different situations, a lot of different conditions. So we have to be very careful. This is why and this is personal, I think that Verdana is good enough and number 14 is good enough for everybody, okay? And I don't need to download Open Dyslexic, but this is up to you, something that you can try and see how it works. Then, projects are very good. projects are necessary because they integrate not only what you have taught, they integrate people. When you have collaborative learning, you are helping them to become included or integrated. And you are allowing them, if you have observed enough and if you know what they are good at, of course, you're not going to ask a child with difficulty to be in charge of the written production. A child with difficulty may work with technology. For example, in this project, in all the projects on the Pulse New Edition, we are allowing a digital format or a normal piece of paper format, okay? So these children are very good at technology, so they can be in charge of that. However, Marcela is saying that one of her students didn't want to work in groups. This is typically the problem. But why is that so? Don't forget that these children are rejected. They have been rejected throughout. So of course they are not going to be willing to participate. Remember, I told you they get along with one or two. So when you have project work, they should be next to those two, not any other, because they will not get along, they will not be willing to work. And if they refuse, they just don't do it, okay? So unfortunately, it's like that because they find it very hard to socialize, very hard, all right? So Gustavo is asking segmentation window. Okay, the segmentation window, I call it the reading window. That's very practical. It's a piece, I have here a piece of paper. This is very clearly explained in the booklets that I told you about at the beginning, okay? You can read that very clearly in the booklet. But for you to get an idea, I will show you. A reading window is something like this, made of cardboard, any color. In theory, any color your student prefers. And so you cut a hole, you cut a rectangle in the center of this small rectangle, you cut it out, okay? And so when you put this rectangle that has a hole in the middle, you put it on the text, the child will see the segment, the part of the text there in the window, okay? This is very useful for dyslexic children or for children with attention disorders, right? So projects are good as long as, one, you allow for the use of technology. Two, you tell the child with special needs to do what they can do. They can draw, they can take photos, they can make pictures, they can help the others. They usually are not good at writing a lot, okay? So that somebody else has to be responsible for. And now I go directly to some of the questions I have received. Let me move my own camera because if not, I cannot read it. Okay. I received a lot of questions. Some were repeated, others were too personal, or others were things that we cannot do anything about. Like, for example, what can I do if I have students with special needs and no connectivity? Well, unfortunately, you have two choices. Either you don't do anything or you start using these techniques on your own. You have to start telling the child to make a reading window and to try and cover the text, and you cannot see the child, so you cannot help the child. So there are limited responses that I can give you about those things. So I have chosen the questions that are very general, that are repeated, and anyway, at the very end, I will show you my personal email. You can write to me about a specific case you have, or you can send me a question on Facebook. I will also be willing to answer, right? So one of the questions was, I have the feeling that most of these children would learn more and better with a private teacher. Should they remain in the LT class? Definitely yes. Yes for both. Yes, they learn better with a private teacher because they learn better one-to-one, definitely. But why is that so? Because there is personalization, because there is attention. It has nothing to do with intelligence. All this has absolutely nothing to do with intelligence. We are not talking about children or students who are or are not intelligent at all. It's about things they do better and things they cannot do so well or so quickly. It's only about that. It's ways of processing information in the brain. Okay, so they learn better. Yes, they learn better with a private teacher, and this is why a classroom with 40 students is not advisable, clearly. But basically, because they need attention and they need personalization. This is why the same student with the same difficulty works much better with one teacher than with the other, with another, any other, okay? But yes, they can learn English. Yes, they can stay in the same classroom if it's not that they can stay. They can stay if the teacher is willing to help. And here we have to be very honest. If we are impatient, if we get like aggressive because we are not used to this, then it doesn't help. The second question is, can dyslexic students sit for written tests, or should they only be assessed orally? This is a very interesting question. The truth is that they can. Yes, they can sit for written tests. Should is the key word there. Should we only assess them orally? I think we should mostly assess them orally because they're going to stand better chances. They will perform better, okay? And it's not a question of forcing them to do what we know they are weak at. So they will have difficulty in a written test. For written tests, you have the same techniques as for the rest. Anticipation and segmentation, exactly the same. They cannot do a test all together in 1 hour. They cannot read a long text and then answer the questions. They will get lost, okay? But yes, they can sit for written tests, and yes, they should be assessed more orally than through written work because they will perform better. Hello from Kiev. Hello, welcome, and thank you for your comments. Okay. Another question has to do with strategies to work with dyslexic learners. Well, all these were strategies, okay? Segmentation, clear use of the blackboard, using a bigger font, bigger printouts, projecting books, using photographs, okay? And also another strategy that works is connected to given feedback. Whatever you correct, it doesn't matter if you use red, pink, green, or pencil. It's not what you use, it's what they get, what they absorb. So it's much better, especially in these conditions in the pandemic, it's much better to record a voice message or a video, a WhatsApp video. You yourselves recording, oh, you did this very well. Why don't you pay attention to that? It's much better than writing a lot. And feedback is essential, but sending a video is also a way of personalizing, okay? Another question is, how can we identify Zen students? Actually, we over-identify. We feel that all of them have problems. It's very difficult as a teacher because, mind you, I'm going to be honest here, there is a psychology for each job. Okay, the teacher is usually a person who wants to be at the front, who wants to be in command, who wants to show authority. So very often we overdiagnose, and he's got reading trouble, he must be dyslexic. He doesn't look at me, he must be autistic. No, it's not so easy at all, at all. And we are not supposed to identify anything. We are not supposed to label anything, just to see what works. The opposite. Thank you very much, Tamara. Thank you so much. We have to see what works. That is the key. And maybe a student with the same issue, you've got one strategy that works better than with another one. And you say, but he's dyslexic too. Each child is unique. Each child is unique, and that is so true for this, okay? So what if their families are not aware? This part is very important. For a mother, for a family, when we are told that our child has got a problem, it's not easy at all. It implies some kind of mourning for the ideal child that we don't have. We want our children to be successful doctors and successful lawyers. We never expect a child with Down syndrome. We never expect an autistic child that will never bond with anybody. It's so difficult. So maybe families are unaware because nobody told them. Maybe families know, but they somewhere block that knowledge. It's not easy. We have to understand that. So if the family is not aware, we are not professionals. We are not neurologists. We are not psychologists. As teachers of English, we call it's our duty. It is our duty to inform parents and say what we notice. We know that your son can do this and can't do that. Don't say only what they cannot do. Mention what they can do. Have you noticed this in other subjects? Has any other teacher told you anything? Have you noticed that, for example, a typical thing that shows difficulty is that they cannot separate words into syllables in Spanish or in the mother tongue. They cannot beat to the rhythm. You play a sentence and you say, okay, it was raining hard. It was raining hard. They cannot. Those very simple tips tell you that something is wrong here. So you tell them what is happening and you say, have you noticed this? If the mother says, no, nobody told me. Well, why don't you pay attention? And if you have any doubts, you go and ask your doctor. That's all. Then in my class, I use my strategies. But I should never say, I think your son is dyslexic. Never, ever. Okay? Well, how can we help dyslexic children and ADD learners in the virtual context? How can we help everybody in the virtual context? That is a very difficult question because it depends on a lot of things. Dyslexic children do very well through and with technological devices. So in many cases, children with difficulty are performing better in the virtual environment than in the real classroom because they are not forced. In terms of time, they are not forced in terms of working with somebody they don't like. They don't see the teachers so often. So somehow this is helping them. Now, a serious problem is the camera. They refuse to have the cameras on. And for us, it's very important to have that camera on because I want to see the expression on their faces. I want to see if they are working or they are lying or whatever they are doing. And very often, they don't want to. You cannot force them to have the cameras on. ADD learners are more of a problem than dyslexic learners in this virtual environment because ADD learners become distracted so easily, so easily. Piece of advice, cameras on, make them stop whatever they are doing every 5 minutes to do something different. If they are children, well, now go and get something orange. Well, go and bring a sweater. Stand up and go and do something for primary. For secondary, do you remember any song with this word? Something that in a way makes them switch, makes them change. TPR, great for primary, okay? So unfortunately, the virtual environment is not helping ADD learners at all. This is why you need videos, constant feedback, ask for help. Parents should be there to help you. If they are not there, And I go to one last question that I have never spoken of. This is why I have developed it a bit more. That is selective mutism anxiety. This is very frequent now and very often confused with children who are deaf or dumb or some kind of autism. And actually, it's a form of anxiety. Okay? No, I can't hear you, Marcela. I can read if you write here in the chat box, but I can't hear you. I'm sorry. She's asking, right? So, maybe you're asking about these children. Okay, these children can hear and they can talk. That's the difference. It's just psychological. It's emotional. So they've got an inability to speak and communicate, but only, this is why it's selective, in certain contexts. So maybe they speak, they never speak a lot. but maybe they say essential words at home and they say absolutely nothing at school. Sometimes they say a few things with a few teachers and nothing to me. What is important is that this is not physical at all. This doesn't happen in settings where they are comfortable. This is why it's emotional. And this is the first thing I have to do. Make them feel relaxed. If you say, come on, hurry up, 2 minutes. No, it doesn't work at all. What happens is that when you make them a question, they just freeze, and they freeze physically. They look at you or they look down and nothing happens. They show no expression and they say no word. The only way to work through this is with a lot of anticipation and one-to-one. That is that child. Okay, I go to his desk, I sit next to him, I explain things, I record videos or voice messages, and in the long run, when he feels confident, he will speak. Okay, but this is a psychological treatment involving all the family. These are their characteristics. You see that very often they go hand in hand with autism. They avoid eye contact, they look shy. Very often they are evenly poorly coordinated. I mean, they cannot cut properly, they walk clumsily, okay, and they have tantrums. But all these are characteristics of autism as well. This is why we cannot diagnose. You need a professional there. Of course, this becomes much worse if the child has got speaking or hearing difficulty, all right? But this is a social disorder, an anxiety disorder, a psychological disorder. So it's not that they take a pill and it's over. Let me go down. Okay. And what we should never do is don't show our anxiety. Avoid things like, well, if you say something, if you read this, I promise I will. No, they have to read because they have to read when they feel comfortable enough to read. Okay, if they say something one day, don't start dancing and clapping because that would be exaggerated and all the others will realize and he will realize. Just give them opportunity. Okay, don't show too much surprise. So we are about to finish. I know I've given you a lot of information. Maria Cristina, if you have doubts, you can write to me. I will show you my email, or if you have a personal case, we can discuss it. Don't worry. This would be the summary, okay? This picture that you can see is part of a collection. A father who is a very prestigious photographer in England decided to photograph his own child who is autistic. And this collection was published by The Guardian. There are a lot of very strong photographs. Basically, although there is no one-size-fits-all approach, these are the things we should do. We should observe very carefully to see what they like, what they are good at. To ask them, do you feel comfortable? Do you prefer this? Do you like this color? Do you see better when you have the reading window that is green or when you have a blue one? What helps you more? Do you feel better sitting here or there? Everything has to be short and clearly organized. Forget about cheap photocopies. Okay, clear, big enough. A lot of visual aids, and when I say visual aids, I mean videos and photos, not weak, gray, poor drawings. Okay, a lot of oral work rather than written work. Segmentation and anticipation, those are the key strategies. And of course, all these strategies are not just for teaching. They go for teaching, for practice, and for testing. Assessment, yes. Written, yes. But with all this, don't be afraid. Anticipate the text that you are going to have at the exam. Perhaps you don't need to anticipate the questions, but yes, the text, okay? So don't be scared. And somebody that I admire said this, and I feel that this reflects what I wanted to show you in this talk. Everybody is a genius in some way. But if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing that it is stupid. And this is what happens to these children. They think they cannot, because that is all we tell them. You cannot. I give you a test that you know you can write. So this is the great change. This is the structure that we need to change. Imagine that you are a mother, a sister, an aunt, and it's your own child who has got this condition. If you see it that way, you will be willing to help them. Here you've got my personal information. You can write to me with all the questions you want. If I know, if I don't know, I will check. As Manila was saying at the beginning, I am studying educational therapy, so I've got my teachers who can help me too. And if you are interested in our booklets, go to macmillan.com/send. There you've got some interesting booklets about all these conditions. And you can also watch my previous seminars if you subscribe to our YouTube channel, Macmillan Argentina. Thank you so, so much. Thank you for all your comments. Lovely. And it's great to see that somehow we can help. Okay? That is what it's all about. Transmitting a little bit. Thank you so much. If you have any questions, I don't know, Mariela. No more? Okay. So thank you a lot. Mariela is joining us, okay?
Can you hear me now? Yes?
Thank you very much for your comments.
Yes, lovely comments. Okay, thanks Alejandra for such an insightful presentation. I think everybody will benefit.
Thank you for your blessing. Thank you. Maria.
All right. Thanks a lot, Ale. It was wonderful. It was wonderful.
Thank you.
Okay. Or yes.
Oh, Natalia, that's so strong. Responsibility. But it's a seed, a small seed, okay? Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Ale. Have a nice weekend. Thank you. And thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
And we move to our next session. Yes, we move to our next session. Before we start with Ariel's session, in just some minutes, some tips for you, resources for you. Yes, you know that yesterday we showed you some resources I mentioned yesterday, but because we know you are working hard and we think we can help you by providing some ready-made activities to use in your classes. And many of you probably know this website, onestopenglish.com. It's the world's leading resource website for English language teachers. And you can find thousands of activities for any level, any age group you are teaching. You'll find video lessons, articles. If you're teaching business English, CLIL, etc., it's actually a lifesaver website. So I recommend you go and visit onestopenglish.com, and you will make the most of it, because actually it's great. It's great. So now we have some minutes. Yes, we have 5 minutes, and we take a short break, and we start with Ariel's presentation. Yes, at 11:30 we will start. So I give you a 5 minutes break, so you can make yourself a cup of coffee, mate, tea, or drink something, whatever. Yes. So I'll see you in 5 minutes.
Remember your favourite teachers at school or lecturers at university who, by planting the seeds of curiosity and imagination and developing a real love of knowledge, inspired you to achieve more on your learning journey, helping you become the educator you are today. Now it's your turn to prepare students for successful lives in a more complex world. Imagine having the certainty that no matter how new discoveries transform our future, your students always have the right skills and knowledge to thrive in it, to appreciate different realities and viewpoints, to create a fairer and more inclusive vision of the world and pass it on to future generations. At Macmillan Education, we make this happen by working hand in hand with teachers and academics, building on our long-standing heritage of innovation in literature, science and education. We connect, we innovate, we inspire. Working in over 100 countries, we connect teachers in local communities to international experts and thought leaders, helping to bring the world into their classrooms and create a positive learning experience for millions of students around the globe. We embrace emerging educational needs, methods and trends like social-emotional learning, life skills and global citizenship, creating innovative content, resources and technology that improve learning outcomes and make teaching rewarding. Always with teachers at the heart, we curate and share new ideas. We support and train, keeping thousands of educators inspired on the path of their professional development, helping them to stimulate the curiosity of their learners and to spread knowledge. We believe in a world where all teachers, wherever they are, have the right solutions to advance learning.